Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar titled Professionalism in Social Media 101, Tips and Best Practices. I am Chris Spalding, Coordinator of Communications here at the Airport Consultants Council, and it is my pleasure to be the host of the webinar today. This is the fourth webinar to be sponsored by the ACC Young Professionals Forum, and we have well over 130 sites registered today, so we're looking forward to a great event. This is one of the many initiatives that we've been undertaking as a forum, and we'll have much more information on that and its activities in just a moment. For those of you who are not familiar with ACC, we are the international trade association that represents private businesses that help plan, design, operate, and supply airports across the country and around the world. ACC is the only association that represents private sector businesses involved in airport development, and part of our mission is to help promote beneficial procurement and contracting practices that enhance opportunities for companies like yours to compete in the marketplace. We also provide opportunities for members to receive technical training on a number of varying topics related to airport development, network and develop professional relationships with peers and airport clients, and interface with decision makers at the FAA, TSA, and other federal agencies on regulatory guidance and advisory circular updates. So this webinar today is being hosted by ACC's own Young Professionals Forum. This forum was formed as a means to engage YPs in airport development and enhance their careers. We're especially pleased to have a really strong leadership team. Carly Shannon with CNS Companies as the forum lead, Sri Kumar with Conoco as vice lead, and other YPs who've taken a great initiative in standing up many of the forum's goals and activities. If you're interested in joining the forum and learning more, you can sign up via a link that's on our YP forum webpage. So before getting underway, I just have a few important logistical items about the webinar. First, participants on the call will be muted. We encourage you to ask questions using the questions window, which is located on the right-hand side of your screen. Also note that we'll send you a copy of the presentation again with the survey this time later today. Finally, I just want to remind you that we may notice a slight delay as I advance the slides, so we appreciate your patience as we move forward through the presentation. And now I'm pleased to introduce today's webinar moderator and young professional, Thierry Sarr with CH2M. A little bit about Thierry. Thierry has been an aviation planner at CH2M and has been there since graduating at FIT with a bachelor's degree in aviation management. He's helped deliver airfield planning projects for civil and military airports in the US and abroad, and also has worked on the O'Hare Modernization Project and Mumbai International Airport Expansion and Renovation Program. He's the social media coordinator for the CH2M Chicago Aviation Team, and also a AAAE certified member, and currently sits on the ACC YP Forum as an education coordinator leader. So with that, I will go ahead and turn the program over to Thierry, who will introduce today's webinar.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning and good afternoon to all of you who joined us today. We wanted to start off the webinar with a video that would help highlight the consequences of social media misuse in a professional setting. However, due to some technical difficulties, we won't be able to play it today. Nevertheless, we'll send you the link in the presentation, and we encourage you to watch it at your leisure. We will find it interesting and funny. Next slide, please. At the end of this webinar, we hope that you'll be able to do the following. Be able to identify social media websites relevant to young professionals and professionals in general. Learn how to create and maintain effective social media profiles and market yourself. Learn how to link your social media accounts to leverage their capabilities. Learn how to spur your professional growth and build and increase your network through social media. Be aware of the do's and don'ts of social media and learn how to maintain professionalism while using different social media platforms. We also hope you able to effectively navigate your organization's social media sites and understand and adhere to your company's social media policies. Next slide. At this time, I would like to introduce today's panelists. First, we have David Kipp. David is a Vice President of Technology Services supporting Burns' mission to provide their aviation clients with integrated and customized designs that ensure safe, comfortable, and efficient passenger travel. For 30 years, Dave has devoted his professional career to the development of technology systems to support airports' infrastructure needs. Dave also currently sits on the board of directors of the Airport Consultants Council. He's an active professional social media user and owns a blog called Poor David's Almanac. Next slide. We also have Christine Shaw, who is the Director of Social Media and staff writer for Airport Improvement Magazine. Her experience in aviation spans the last decade, with 8 years at CETA, regional marketing and social media. Christine is also a nationally published writer, and her work has been featured at the Washington Post, the Huffington Post, Good Housekeeping, and Cosmopolitan, among other publications. In Austin, she's a co-producer of the Listen to Your Mother show, which takes place around Mother's Day every year in 40 cities around the country. Last but not least, we also have Erin Tyler. Erin always held a passion for marketing and communications. More than a decade into her career, her motivation for developing and implementing successful integrated marketing campaigns and internal employee engagement programs has not wavered. Her expertise includes brand and reputation management, strategic communications, social and digital media, media relations, and so much more. Now 10 years with the global engineering firm CH2M, Erin is currently supporting the strategic marketing and communications needs for the company's $1 billion transportation portfolio. And at this time, I'll let David Kipp give us an overview of relevant social media platforms and websites. David?
Thank you, Jerry, and welcome Y peers across the fruited plain. I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon. And even though I'm an old guy and long in the tooth, you can always be learning. And this is the first webinar I've ever done, so this is a first for me. And I hope you don't mind. I titled my brief talk here, "Social Media for Airport Youngsters." That's not a pejorative term. I consider this sort of an earned privilege. Like driving 20 miles an hour under the speed limit, or counting out my change at the checkout line. It's a privilege to be able to share my thoughts on social media with you this afternoon, even though I'm the world's oldest dilettante. And I'm going to be pretty practical about this. I think when it comes to this topic, it's easy to get preachy about what to do, what not to do. I'm more about kind of what works and how to be useful in social media. So that's sort of my thrust. Next slide, please. I chose, this is a quote from Forbes magazine, and I did this for a couple of reasons. The first is to give you a positive slant on this. I think it's really easy especially in the professional world, to find people who are cynical or skeptical of social media. And so I want to kind of do a little cheerleading here and encourage everyone to take some risks and to kind of put themselves out there on social media, because it has a lot of positive benefits, most of which are hard to be quantified and difficult to see. There's a wonderful story kind of along these lines about the discovery of alternating current. It was discovered by a physicist named Michael Faraday in the 19th century, and the way things were announced in those days were at public gatherings called lyceums. And so Michael Faraday was showing his discovery of alternating current, and a gentleman in the audience stands up and says, well, that's really very interesting, Dr. Faraday, but of what use is that? And Faraday looked at this fellow and said, sir, of what use is a newborn baby? And the notion here is that there are some things, particularly new things, that are answers for which there are yet to be developed questions. And I feel like social media is along kind of these lines. We have answers for which there are not yet the questions. Next slide, please. Now let me spend just a few minutes on the major social media outlets that professional firms are using. And this is going to seem pretty basic to most of you. We have Twitter in the bottom left, we have LinkedIn in the top center, and we have Facebook on the bottom right. I think everybody knows about those and probably uses those things. But what's interesting about this, and the point I want to make about it, is that to use them effectively in the professional environment, you kind of shift your mental model from a purely personal perspective to what I call a professionally personal perspective. You want your voice to be heard, but you want it to be in a professional environment. So that these are the major ones that people are using right now, and think about them in terms of becoming professionally personal. Next slide, please. Now, there are some other emerging channels that are out there, and there are a few hardy enthusiasts out in the business world that are taking these less traveled roads. Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and Google Plus are some of those. My feeling about these things is that we may find ways to use these productively. They're almost all visual. They are visual bulletin boards or kind of visual storefronts, and I think it's a little harder, at least has been harder, for professional firms who don't have a product to show, to use that effectively. But they are emerging. I think everybody should keep an eye on them and see how people are using them to advantage. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about the different platforms and the different emphasis, primarily from a Burns perspective, although I don't think our perspective is tremendously different than most other professional firms. They all have a little different flavor. I use them all. I don't use them all well, but I do use them all, and I find them to be beneficial from not only a Dave Kipp perspective, but from a Burns perspective for different things. Twitter is something that is good for kind of regular daily posting and to provide links to your followers and sort of position as an industry expert. There's not a tremendous amount of, at least on my side of things or on the Burns Institute, too much in the self-promotion thing, other than the retweeting of "Come here, Dave Kipp, talk about social media," which was embarrassing. But it's a quick kind of daily or regular sort of outreach to people that promotes a kind of an expertise image in the marketplace. LinkedIn is, a lot of people use that or see that as being kind of a job search, which of course it is, but more importantly for this conversation, LinkedIn really provides a way to brand yourself professionally and individually. And so some people recoil from that. I certainly did when I was first introduced to LinkedIn. But what I came to realize is, this is an old adage that one of my early mentors taught me, is that in our world, the personal is the professional. And so nobody really hires Burns. You know, people hire Burns and Kipp or Burns and Shaw. It really is a people business, and your individual brand is very important to you and to your firm. Facebook is probably the one that we use the released. It has its origins in kind of social, personal sharing. So we use it as sort of a blending the fun and the professional. We have to do that pretty carefully, and I think some of our other speakers will talk about how to do that and some of the do's and don'ts. And then there's also Instagram, which I have been using, and I'm a jury still out on that for me. But Instagram is a purely visual platform to pictures that are relevant to the industry or to you professionally. Next slide, please. One of the real powerful parts of social media I found is being able to integrate between the different platforms, linking things to one another. So the one that I have shown here is about the ability to link Twitter into your LinkedIn account. There are other opportunities to do that that you should take advantage of as the platforms get more widely adopted and people get more comfortable looking at them and seeing them. The ability to link easily back and forth is really helpful. I do that with my silly blog, the Almanac, and I'm surprised at how many people respond to that. It's really quite surprising. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, and I promised that I wouldn't get too preachy to you, but and I'm not going to. I just wanted to make a few final recommendations here. The first one had to do with the pictures on the right here. Whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not, we are all social media celebrities, and it is extremely common for people to understand more about you by searching social media. Now, if you go and Google Dave Kipp, you can find various versions of me. Some of them more or less flattering than others. So it's really incumbent on us to kind of manage that, be aware of it, and manage the way you are seen in social media. The top one, of course, is the real Dave Kipp, as modest as that may be. And then the second one is a guy who landed in jail after a fight with someone in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I believe. That's the wrong Dave Kipp. So my final thoughts on here, I don't think I'll read each one of these to you, but the main ones that I'd like to leave you with is to be courageous and really don't use the excuse that because I don't have time or I don't have anything to say. Get out there, and you've all got something important to say and keep track of, and do that. Put your foot out there, and stay in sync with the culture of your firm, and don't get too far away from that. And help other people do the same thing. People have done that for me. I hope I'll do that for you, and find good ways to use social media for everybody's benefit. Thank you. And yeah, you're about to get a huge upgrade to Kristen Shaw, who's not only a great colleague, a dear friend, and Kristen has a lot of good things to say about social media. Kristen?
Well, that was a lovely introduction. Thank you. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about professional and effective profiles. We're going to talk a little bit about building and maintaining an effective profile, how to market yourself. We'll talk a little bit about professional headshots and the do's and don'ts. Next slide, please. So which profiles and why? Dave talked a little bit about this. I'm going to take it in a little bit different direction and talk to you in terms of your full career, and not just what you're doing now, but think about what you're going to be doing down the road. LinkedIn is your online resume, and it's widely known as the most professional platform of the social media platforms, and this is going to be what your current employer looks like, your friends, your current colleagues, potential clients, potential future employers, all of those things. So no pressure, right? It lasts forever. Now you can always update it, and that's important to do too. Is LinkedIn should be updated with your most current information, and keep it keep it classy, as Dave says, and you don't have to list every single job. If you scooped ice cream at Dairy Queen in high school or even college, you don't have to list all of those jobs. You know, list your most relevant and recent jobs since college. Twitter is your personality. You can get your likes, your dislikes, and I said in 140 characters or less. So you're somewhat constrained by the length, which is good sometimes. But this is where you can share pertinent links to articles maybe that you saw that are relevant to your industry or that tell a little bit about your likes and dislikes. Facebook, as Dave said, it's proceed with caution with Facebook because you tend to have a lot of your friends there. It's the most casual of the social media platforms. So just watch what you say, you know, be yourself, but just be aware of who is in your friend list and who's seeing your profile, and make sure you're set to private if you don't necessarily want everybody in the world to look at it. Instagram, you can show your creative side. If you are a creative type or you want to show more of your creative side, Instagram is a great place to do that. I like to say that Instagram is low drama because it's visuals and graphics, and it looks nice. It's a good way to also establish your brand. Snapchat, I'm going to be honest with you, I have not tried Snapchat. I've seen it, but I have to say I won't do it with a fox. I won't do it in a box. I'm not doing Snapchat yet, but it's getting more popular, and more companies, more brands are starting to use it. So just be aware of what it has to offer. Next slide. For your professional versus your personal bio. As you're building your professional bio, especially on LinkedIn, you're thinking social media resume. Use your keywords that you want people to find, the way you want people to find you. So you want to establish your business connections, establish your thought leadership. Avoid the overused cliche terms as much as you can. If it sounds cliche to you, it probably is. Use words that are action-oriented. Instead of saying, I was responsible for a team of 5, or I was responsible for maintaining this, talk about the numbers. Talk about how you affected change in your organization. Talk about what you're doing and how you're impacting your job and your career and the world at large, especially if you do volunteering. It's always good to highlight some of the things you're doing outside of work too, to think about your overall career and what you're going to be doing next, because the likelihood is you're not going to be in this career forever, this particular job forever. You might be in this career forever, but this job might only last a few years. It might last 10 or 20. You never know. But you should be prepared. Your colleagues, your business contacts, your employers will look at you in the context of how you present yourself. So back to Kip's tips too, you want to be relevant, you want to be classy, and remember that potential employers and recruiters will Google you. There's no probably about that. They will Google you. What impression do you want to make? One example I like to use, when I was looking for a full-time babysitter for my son when I was working full-time, I took a look at their Facebook profiles to see what these people were about. They're going to come into my home and watch my son, and I could tell really quickly the ones that I did not want any collaboration with because they were very negative or they had nasty things to say about their previous employer. You know, all those things can be found, so be aware. And even in your personal profiles, you present yourself in a positive way. You spotlight your interests and your hobbies and the aspects of you that will help you connect with others. As Dave again said, I really like this, the personal is the professional. You know, people buy from people they like, and the same goes for hiring. Your connection is key. So you want to make a good connection with people online as well as you do in person. Next slide, please. So put your best face forward. You see the pictures at the top, the one on the left. That is Steve Allen. It looks very professional, and he's smiling, and that's nice. On the right, this is the guy at a party, which may be tempting to use, showing your fun side, but I wouldn't recommend it. With your username, you want to use something professional and easy to understand. There are some athletes that use silly handles, and they can get away with it. Or Dizzy Barbie 198244 is the example I'm using here. Think of your brand and the way you want to be represented and the way you want people to think of you is important. Use your name or a variation of your brand. When you're uploading your profile photo to LinkedIn or any of your social media platforms, name your profile photo appropriately before uploading it. This way Google can find you. So instead of leaving your picture, if you downloaded it from your camera or your phone, instead of leaving it with a number file, call it your name, .jpg, or your business. And that helps you that helps your SEO, your search engine optimization. Be sure to fill out your bio to its full potential. Twitter has a very limited bio that you can put up there. I tend to use keywords, words that sum me up pretty succinctly. LinkedIn allows you to use something longer, and Facebook also allows something longer. Use a professionally taken photograph, please. Don't crop yourself out of a group image. I know I was just at an event, the AAAE annual conference. They had an opportunity to get free headshots. If you see that, take advantage of that. Get yourself a good quality photograph. Go to JCPenney, get a friend to take it on a neutral background. Just make sure you look professional. You're not cropping yourself out of a party photo that you happen to have at home. Next slide. My recommendation is to keep your business profile separate from your personal profile, and the way I do that is to keep my Facebook profile private. It's not open to the public. I keep it private so that only the people that I have accepted as friends or that have friended me can see what I'm doing. So take heed when you're friending business contacts or clients, and be aware that what you say represents your company as well. And whatever you comment on is knowledge to anyone connected to you. Think about how you want to present your private life. Your pictures say 1,000 words on what you're doing, so you want to be sure that everything that you do is representing you well if you are connected to the business side. Remember that just because social media exists doesn't mean you have to share every detail of your life. I think that's really important. And when it comes to Snapchat, too, Snapchat is billed that it's temporary, that you only have an image up there for, I think, 24 hours or less. But people can take screenshots, so remember that. Next slide, please. You've heard of the book, probably it was a major bestseller called Eat This, Not That. So that's what I was thinking of with this. Do this and not that. On the yes side, for your online resume with LinkedIn especially, use vibrant, active language to tell people who you are and what you do and what you're all about. Remember that your profile is public. Share your interests and your hobbies to share your depth. So if you are an athlete, if you like to read specific kind of books, if you volunteer in the community some way, if you have a really interesting hobby, that's a great way for people to connect with you, as well as maybe your college connections. And keep your business profile up to date for your career. On the right side, don't post anything you don't want an employer to see. And Erin's going to go over that a little bit more next. Treat your Facebook or LinkedIn page with the care you'd give your resume. You don't want your resume to have typos. You don't want it to be messy and chaotic. The same goes for your personal and professional profiles. Politics, I say no unless you're running for office. That's a different category. Religious affiliation, anything like that, you want to be careful about that as well, unless you're applying to something that's relevant to that too. And that is my main advice for you. And next up, you have Erin Tyler, who's going to tell you some more really fabulous and interesting information.
Oh, well, thank you, Kristen. I hear Dave not talking about being preachy or trying not to, and I'm actually going to jump in wholeheartedly into that world. For those of us who do have children, we teach each other and our children how to cross the streets and be cautious, and how to make sure that you're slowing down at yellow lights. Well, this is that version. So we're going to move into the first slide, which is regarding blurred lines, personal and professional. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. So as we've talked about, social media is an absolutely terrific way to humanize a company. It's a key part to the inbound marketing strategies, but we have to know as individuals of that company, employees of the company, what is expected of us before we get into deep water. So one of the things that we've constantly addressed, and Kristen mentioned this, is that your interpretations, those thoughts, your ethics, your moral compass, so much more, this is a written account of all of those things. And many times, if companies are smart, they're creating a value-add social media policy that outlines how an employee is to interact on these types of channels. So the first question to ask for is, does your company have such a policy? Usually they're actually tailored to fit a culture, business objectives, growth markets, strategies, all of those. So I encourage each of you, when you're done with this, is to get offline, go back onto your company information and see if there is a policy. Take time to read it. There is no simple answer for company policy. Some are very strict and others are extremely flexible, and it's important to know what you're up against. With that said, because anything goes when it comes to this, it's hard to answer what to look for, but I wanted to give you a couple of ideas. Your social media sites that you're so keen on checking every 10 seconds, because that is the world of today, may just be blocked on your work computers. Using social media at work could be prohibited. Make sure you understand that, and the reason is some companies do believe that social media drastically reduces productivity and efficiency. Oh my goodness, can you imagine not having your phone? And we need to have those boundaries at work, and that's truly what they expect. Other companies, however, encourage that interaction, and I'll give you an example. Walmart wants to make sure that they have employees who are what they call official Twitter users for the company. They are identified as such. They stick to customer service, client replies only, and they focus on that alone. And they embrace, Walmart has embraced this with their Twitter users. But the stipulation to that is if you are such a user, that's all you talk about. That's all you can use your handles for. So they cannot engage and focus on any personal elements or unnecessary banter. So how you identify yourself. Kristen also touched on a few things related to photos and how you name things, accounts, so on and so forth. But your company may require elements of this. Can you state your company name within your handle? Are you allowed to state that you work for a certain company, where your thoughts are coming from? And an example of this are Oracle employees. Anytime that they post something related to industry trends, what might be going on in the world of their caliber, they have to reference that their opinions are that of their own and not of Oracle's. But at the same time that they're saying that, they have to say that they are indeed an Oracle employee. So seems a little odd, but the reality is, let's be honest, let's focus on what I'm saying, but at the same time, it is my personal opinion. And then another thing to consider is the engagement tips. Some companies truly do define the types of activities they would like you to perform on each channel and steer clear of. In other words, is your company growing in a certain area, or do they have services that they've been focusing on to push versus maybe promoting incubator or smaller dollar item services? So you need to know what's going on in the strategy world of your company. The best thing I can say here as we get into this a little bit further is take a moment, read the policy that you have. If it's not a value add, or if it doesn't exist at all, this is a great opportunity for you to claim a stake in the history of your company. Connect with your corporate communications team, your media relations team, and be involved in establishing a policy that works good for the company culture and the business and allows the employees to benefit and not only benefit from, but the company to benefit from the strategy and direction of what social media can bring. So keep that in mind, and I would encourage you all to take that into consideration when you're thinking about how you can get more involved with your company. We're actually going to move on to the next slide and talk about considering the guidelines that really we all should be upholding. Some of these are very clear, and so I'm going to go through these quickly, but slightly a reminder. We talked about being transparent, similar to Oracle. If you're writing about a company, if you're writing about a competitor, use your real name, identify the work, be clear about what you're saying. Don't ever represent yourself or your company in a false or misleading way, and be respectful. In other words, no spam, no remarks that are off topic or offensive. Common courtesy, in other words, asking permission to publish a report or state that you've won something, making sure that you're being transparent so that you don't violate privacy or confidentiality, not only of the company, but of your peers, of competitors, partners, you name it. This is all applicable. Again, very common sense here, but stick to your area of expertise. You do provide a unique and individual perspective, but try not to grow outside of that area and either get yourself lost in a conversation you can't get out of or into hot water again with the company. If for any reason, number 6, you have the urge to disagree with others, which I realize is a natural human instinct for us, let's try to keep it appropriate and polite. One of the best things that I can encourage you to do if you ever get into this when it comes to industry perspectives or company-related items is to always engage your PR director for advice on how to disengage from the dialogue, how to respond, how to walk away, just so that that doesn't get sent into the world of the internet and can be retrieved in other manners. But we're actually, from 6 and beyond, we're getting into a world of let's just try to avoid it. Writing about competition, although we want to be diplomatic, maybe we should just try to avoid those areas. Commenting on legal matters, litigation, third-party issues, again, let's try to avoid it. Participating on topics that are possibly crisis situations. So, for example, my company often supports aftermath of natural disasters. That is, though, a very relevant and wonderful thing that my company does. That is not something that I am privy and should be discussing. So, again, I'm just going to avoid it. The reality is anonymous comments, you may feel that you are being anonymous, but anyone can be tracked back to an IP address. So consider that when you're getting into these types of conversations and talking about things, even as something as what seems honorable as a crisis situation. And then, as Kristen mentioned, Google, quite frankly, the internet has a very, very long-term memory, and what you publish is widely accessible. And though you might feel that you are a nice private person and have only your list of friends that were scrutinized as you connected with them, they have friends and members that are so far beyond that. And then again, just a reminder here to refer your media inquiries to the right person within your company. So next area is just consider this. Take a step back when you're getting into an area that you're concerned about, and we'll go to the next slide here, please. That if you're going to walk away with anything, when you're first posting something and you're about to share a photo or share a great image of an event that you just attended or a comment that you heard, would you walk in with that photo or your post into your boss's or client's office and share that as though it were a poster from school and be very proud of that? And if you're hesitant to answer that and you're cringing a little and you want to turn away or your cheeks get red, don't post it. Your English teacher, they work very hard throughout elementary school to make sure that you are grammatically unimpeachable, so check for typos. If you want to be taken seriously, you have to seem professional, even in the personal world, so make sure everything is written correctly and that you are void of any issues such as typos. And that is in a world where we have learned the texting craze of shortened language, and we really need to be aware that professionally that is probably not the best image that we want to give. When you're sharing, liking, retweeting, emoji, you name it in Facebook, is what you are sharing universally acceptable? Be aware that though there are no direct cases of this, legally you are equally as liable as the original poster of something. Should you choose to share, like, love, hug, do whatever you choose to do, passing it on to the broader public world. So keep that in mind. And then again, as Kristen mentioned, are they really your friends and family? Are these people truly people you know and trust and that you want to associate and connect your personal brand with? And then for those of you who do have lovely friends or family, sometimes we all tend to get inappropriate with some of our comments. So if they are your friends and family and they maybe get a little boisterous at times, there are some things that you just, quite frankly, may want to hide. So consider that as you're going through your social media channels. We've discussed personal brand. We're going to move on to the next couple of slides here. And I wanted to reference that very quickly before we get into questions and a few more information about some upcoming events. So what is it? If you haven't heard or really looked into this, it truly is your reputation on paper, written word, your elevator speech. how you want others to see yourselves, what you stand for, how you stand out, what your unique perspective is. One of the quotes that I really liked here that you'll see, we are CEOs of our own companies, Me Inc. To be in business today, our most important job is to be the head marketer for our brand called You. And the reason I have a pig up there with lipstick is I'm assuming you've heard the saying, if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. And this is where, with your personal brand, you have to be honest with yourself. Otherwise, you're not going to get far. So consider that as we go through the next slide. So how to create a brand? I say that, as we've all mentioned, the world out there already includes your personal brand, most likely if you are on social media channels. So it's really about managing that brand. When you have some time, Google yourself. See what is out there. Get a feel for what others are seeing when you're not in the world of you, and decide whether or not it's headed in the right direction. Again, on the weekend, take pen to paper, however you normally sit down and purge your thoughts, and ask yourself some of these questions. What makes you unique? What image do you want to project? What do you want to be known for? And don't try to be precise at first. Just write some thoughts. How do you want your message to be consistent across all of your platforms? Again, we mentioned the elevator speech. Once you've kind of answered some of these questions, what your expertise is, where you are in the world of today, not 5 years from now, not what you want to accomplish, your vision, mission, all of that, but truly where you are in today's personal brand world. Then think about, how do I say that on an elevator ride? If I were with the one person I wanted to hire me for a terrific opportunity, and I knew I had 20 seconds or less, how would I describe that? And get that succinct. And make sure that you are consistently defining your personal brand across all of those platforms. And though we've talked about personal and professional, and one of the things that Dave said about the professionally personal I loved, because there really is only one full package. Is there anyone that someone could find that puts that image in that brand and that elevator speech into question? So really look at your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your Facebook, and to determine by stepping back, are all of these things in sync? Back up any broad statements with objective proof. Think about those numbers that Kristen referred to, dates, what you've done to back up those claims. And then again, as you keep it brief, invest in you. Look at where you want to be in 5 years and what your personal brand looks like, and how excited you are to describe it to someone on an elevator ride. And feel free to stop a stranger. It's actually a fun experiment. And invest in yourself. See what goals, what purpose you have in the next several years, and take a moment to invest in that personal brand. If you're not excited to share your elevator speech today, get to a point in 6 to 12 months where you are. But make sure you always feel authentic, that though your changes occur based on life circumstances and a number of things, embrace it and evolve. On the next item of personal brand for the next slide, just a few things about why do I care to do this homework assignment that we're encouraging you to do. It gives you a moment to be permission to be yourself, really. Create the direction in your life. Decide what your unique promise is and what you want to share. And by doing that, you gain confidence. You're highlighting those strengths. You're finding them. You're giving yourself a direction and how to use them. And again, that in turn turns into credibility. You're creating a brand promise. Just like you walk into a store, whether for clothing or for food or a hotel or travel, whatever it may be, they have a brand promise and they have a target market. You have the same thing. And by building this personal brand, you are developing a world where your actions must validate that promise to your target audience. You're showcasing your specialties, which we've already talked about. No one knows everything, so saying you dabble in a little bit of it all is not a wise choice. You are an area or an expert in an area, and you need to focus on that and do it well and enjoy what you're doing. It is your legacy, your personal brand. People will remember those actions. People will remember what that legacy, what the story that you wanted to tell and the proof points that you had. From a visibility perspective, as I mentioned, you can't be everything and you can't be everything to everyone. So your target audience really is important. If you're connecting with the right people, not the entire world, you're building those strong relationships. You're being clear and consistent in the ways in which you become familiar with others and how you want them to become familiar with you. That target audience really is key. It will continue to grow and evolve and be defined as you do the same in your career, but you can't embrace everyone and assume that they'll be able to move you forward. Your differentiation, distinguishing yourself from the competition, really think about what is your uniqueness. How do you pinpoint why you are different than everyone else? And this is mainly important when it comes to the recruitment world, when you're looking for career opportunities and moving forward. By building a personal brand, you are focusing your energy. Everyone is busy, every single person. So use that brand like a filter that allows you to more easily say yes to the opportunities that align with that brand and no to the opportunities that just aren't worth the energy and don't drive that brand that you're creating. So in a world of the crazy busy, know that being on brand is very important, and just as equal as on brand is the off brand, which if you're off brand, again, everything that you've done with your personal brand is unfortunately not going to be working in your favor. So consider that focus, that energy, and how to filter with the yeses, the nos. And then finally, when you've done all of this, the comfort factor plays in. So hopefully we're not changing our focus every few months. We've got some stability in how we're defining ourselves, and by doing that you can let yourself be lazy. After you've pinpointed that personal brand, you've got that elevator speech down and you're ready to rock and roll, you're investing in you. The beauty of it is while it's never static, it thrives on consistency, and you can just relax and allow yourself to work that personal brand. So do the tough work up front, reap the rewards down the road, and remind yourself that sometimes it is good to be comfortable and lazy as long as you've really built that strong personal brand. And I think I'm actually turning this now over to Terry.
Actually, this is Chris with ACC. Thank you, Aaron. And that was really great content. We'll actually head into questions shortly here, which Thierry will be handling. But before we do that, I wanted to quickly cover some upcoming ACC activities and YP activities that will be taking place over the next several months. And I wanted to go through these actually really quickly because we only have about 10 minutes for questions here. But we do hold quarterly conference calls with the YP Forum. Our next one being June 30th. So if you are interested in learning more about these webinars and what we're doing in the forum, you can feel free to join us then. And we do hold these one-on-one webinars throughout the year. And of course, we're always open to new ideas for new topics. So please feel free to email us if you have any ideas on your end. We have our Airports Technical Workshop in DC coming up in August, as well as the annual conference in Palm Beach Gardens. And a really great way to meet with other young professionals is are those conferences, as well as the symposium, which you can save the date for and mark on your calendars for next year in February, because they have a very robust program that's put together by Faith Group every year with other professionals in the industry. I also want to just quickly note that ACC is proudly partnering with Airport Business again this year on their Top 40 Under 40 awards. Airport Business will be sending out nomination forms soon, so you can take this opportunity to recognize an individual or individuals in aviation for their contributions to the industry and a job well done. And any other information on ACC, training, and events, you can visit the ACC website. Along with participating in the YP Forum, a great way to get directly involved in ACC and the industry in general is just by participating on our committees. Our committees cover a number of disciplines and delve into technical topics and issues. Here's a list for you just so you kind of know what kind of committees you can get involved in based on your background. But really the extent of your participation is entirely up to you. But keep in mind that it is ACC member exclusive. They have periodic conference calls to discuss technical topics, or you can participate in their in-person meetings at events like our annual conference or the symposium. And with that, I will hand this off to Thierry for any questions we have.
Thank you, Chris. We have time for a few questions. The first question will be for Kristen. Kristen, could you tell us how you typically use your social media sites and channels on a daily basis?
Well, I use them in a lot of ways. Because I'm the director of social media for Airport Improvement Magazine, we use it to highlight some of the articles in our issue. We also use Twitter for the same, and we like to highlight some of the good things that the consultants and some of our clients and airports are doing out there as well. From a personal perspective, I'm a blogger, and I blog for myself as well as for some of the publications you talked about at the beginning. And so I use all of my platforms to promote my writing, my brand, and I'm a freelance writer. So I also talk about the kinds of things that I'm working on and promote my business as well.
Thank you, Kristen. Erin, would you be able to answer the same questions?
I am happy to do that. Quite frankly, my daily routine is on social media, specifically with my company and the company's brand and moving our strategy forward. So I would say that from a professional manner, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and some of the major channels that we've referred to, I'm using on a daily basis to move forward the company's strategy specific to our transportation portfolio. On a personal basis, because I am so prominently out there on a daily 8 to 10 hour a day company use, I would classify myself as more of a stalker personally. I'm not pushing, posting, liking, tweeting a bunch of things personally as much as I am following, reading, seeing what other industry experts are doing, what our competitors are doing. And I know that use of the stalker word isn't the best, but I would fall into that category on a personal basis, just given how active I am professionally.
Thank you, Erin. How about you, Dave?
Use.
Is Dave still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
How do you typically use social media?
I would classify myself as an experimentalist. I use all of the big three, well, the big four, in different ways. I probably use Twitter the most frequently, and I use that to share information or news that I find particularly worthy. Once in a while, I'll share a point of view, but not often. Most of the time, I'm sharing information that I think is relevant to the aviation industry or the transportation industry, and being careful not to be overly kind of self-promoting either of myself or of Burns. LinkedIn, I'm less frequent about that. Typically, if I see things that make me happy, I will share those. And Facebook, most of the time, I'm using that for my family. So the people, and I don't think that's a bad thing to do. That's me. I'm a very family-centered person, so I use Facebook primarily to do that, as well as some professional things.
Thank you, Dave. I have a question for Christine. How important is it to have a presence in the lesser channels, Google+, Pinterest, Snapchat, etc.?
You have to choose which ones are most important to you, in my opinion, because there are so many. I used to use Google+ when it was emerging, and I pretty much abandoned it because most people I know are not using Google+. And that's just my preference. I stick to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram primarily, and then LinkedIn I also use professionally.
Thank you, Christine. Erin, question for you. What are the first things you look for when you browse people's profiles on social media?
Well, I think it depends on what purpose I have, why I'm out there. For example, because I'm a social media user, I'm constantly looking for those who are industry experts in that field. So I'm actually a heavy LinkedIn user for the true purpose of trends and what the world is doing when it comes to other experts out there. So as Kristen mentioned, I'm looking for the key phrases that apply to my particular interest and finding people that have those proof points. And I'm following them, reading their blogs, looking at what articles they may have posted on major magazines or newsletters. So with those key phrases based on what I'm looking for, I know who to follow and know who has the experience and relevance to my needs.
Thank you, Erin. The next question is for Dave. Do you know whether airports in the U.S. or abroad use social media to inform passengers and employees of operational responses and recovery during emergency situations?
Yes, there are a number of airport and public agencies who use social media to inform the public of what's going on in crisis situations. The most common medium for that is Twitter. That I've seen because it has more instantaneous effect on people. But I know that the one I'm most familiar with is in the Los Angeles airport when they had the active shooter incident in Terminal 3. They did use Twitter during that event, and I think a number of other airports will use that. And a lot of agencies have Twitter accounts that they use not only for that but for everyday kind of where parking is getting full or where parking is available or security lines are long, plan extra time. So there's actually quite a bit of communication going on between airports and their constituents using Twitter.
Thank you, Dave. The next question for Christine. How do you use social media at conferences? Do you use it to connect with peers and colleagues and industry professionals? And do you see social media being used as a substitute to business cards?
I wouldn't say social media is a substitute for anything. I see it as an enhancement because a lot of the time you can really you can even build relationships on social media just by seeing what people are interested in and finding out what you have in common and having discussions via social media. I think you can build a lot of rapport, but I wouldn't say it's a substitute for the in-person or just matching up business cards with faces. I think is always a good idea too.
Thank you, Christine. We do not have any more questions at this time, so I'll let Chris conclude the session.
Thanks, Terry. So that wraps up our webinar here, and ACC would like to thank Dave, Kristen, and Erin, and Terry for helping out with today's webinar. There's some really excellent content and advice for all of us. And finally, thanks to you for your participation today. We'll be sending out a copy of the presentation and the survey to you later on. And of course, we encourage you to sign up for the ACC YP form if you haven't already, and ACC committee is using the survey. And of course, we greatly appreciate your feedback, both on the content of the webinar and the webinar application and interface as well. Stay tuned for future webinars that will be sponsored by ACC in the future. And thanks again for joining us, and we hope you have a nice day.